You're listening to More Than Reports, and I'm your host, Paul B. Felix.
In today's episode, Paul and Alex continue their series about data for growing businesses. Today, they will talk about how data can give you the edge against competition.
Paul, few concepts are as familiar to people in business as competition. Buyers like it. We as buyers promote it. Sellers embrace it. We're here to talk all things data. So, what can data do to help businesses stay more competitive?
That is a big question, Alex. I think we have pretty similar views on this, but let's just bring it all the way back to the beginning, and that is what is going to make companies that are in competition, one of those companies be more successful than the other. And let's say that those two companies are on par when it comes to their offering. So one of them doesn't have a superior product or service. These are basically, maybe we consider them commodity type offerings, whatever, they're on par. So what's going to make one succeed or be more successful than the other? You could say, well, it's going to be their ability to market better. Or you could say it's their ability to execute better, operate better. Maybe they have better leadership that's more insightful. They are able to predict what's going to happen in the future, or they're more accurate in predicting what's going to happen in the future with demand. A lot of factors like that. But I think if you go back one level from there, and you, aside from those, I guess, horizontal type decisions, it's the actual decisions that we're talking about. It's those people that are making decisions and taking actions on those decisions. Okay, so that's it, right? That's what makes a company successful or unsuccessful, or basically that's what determines the path of a company. What else could it be? It is the people in that company and what they decide to do and the actions that follow those decisions. To me, that's, it's not rocket science, but it's pretty important. We're saying it's the cumulative decision-making ability of everyone in that organization, not just the leadership, but it's the cumulative decision-making ability of everyone in that organization that's going to determine whether that organization is successful or not. I'm going to pause there for a minute, Alex. And do you agree with what I'm saying? Because I don't think it's a leap, but I think it's a very important point before we start getting into what data can do to help us.
Yeah, no, that's a good start. I think a lot of what the goals are. We use the term competition. First comparison comes to mind, competitive sports. Who wins? There's a game, and those start and finish. It's very different in business. We have infinite cycles. So, who is the winner? It came as you were talking. I'm thinking of big competitions. As I was growing up, Coke and Pepsi. Very similar products. And who's best? Well, both are still in business. I imagine both are successful companies. Probably turn a profit. Who won? I don't know. But it's typically more difficult than that. When we're talking to growing companies, we're not competing for, I guess, 50 half of the global market in the cola category. More typically, companies are actually competing for survival, for relevance. There are forces that need to be understood. Consolidation is one of them. Do I have the size necessary to stay in business in my segment? So it's a lot of information to process. And you're right. I mean, the people there are every day, the group that together makes up the business needs to understand what it is that we are in it for. So it's the connection of all these bits of outside information, external information, and what we're doing inside. And I can't get past the idea that data is absolutely central for competition. Take any of these groups, we call them companies, businesses, and the people inside need to have a very clear understanding of what the factors, the measures, and I think that brings us to a key point. there is no competition without understanding what metrics drive performance. So those that win, and I use that term very loosely here, there's, you survive, you thrive, you grow. Uh, you're measuring every single one of those uh, concepts there, right? I mean, are we growing? How do you measure growth? Is it market share? Is it just your revenue? Is your revenue growing at par with the growth of your industry? So it's just an infinite list of metrics.
Yeah, um, I absolutely agree. There's no end to how much you can measure and use that, and how you can use that information. I want to go back though a little bit because I want to finish my little tirade here. the if we agree that it is the cumulative decision making ability of everyone in your organization that's going to ultimately determine your organization's success, then how important is it to make sure those people understand the environment that is going to influence the outcome of those decisions? How important is it to help those people understand the environment that is going to ultimately determine whether their decisions are going to be successful or unsuccessful? It is the foundation.
It is
And
everything.
it is everything, right? It's, again, and we're talking about companies that are on par here, meaning the people are on par, the products are on par. We're not talking about some people that are just way more experienced than another company who has a very low experience. We're saying if we have all things equal here, which frankly, that's not a stretch. We see it. We work with a lot of companies in similar industries, and we can see the people that work at those companies. They're by and large very skilled, highly educated people. So there's something else, right? And that something else we're talking about here is empowering those people to actually have the information they need to make decisions that have positive outcomes. I think it's just so easy to just talk about data and metrics, KPIs, and miss how important this simple little point is. I think we're really talking about data culture now, right? How important is this? And again, I think it's just fundamental. And we always say, your business intelligence, whatever you're going to call it, data analytics, your data team, whatever you call that group, it is not a project. It is a business function. And we're talking about marketing. Well, marketing is going to need to have information, not just for the decisions they're making today, but tomorrow and into the future. Same thing for your operations. Same thing for your leadership. It is not something that ever stops. So having that mindset of a data culture where you're going to always be looking for better information to make better decisions and measure the outcomes of the decisions and adjust, that type of a cycle of continuous improvement is critical to be successful in using data in an organization.
I think that's where leadership meets um, the team, right? Well, let me try that again. I think it's the language of uh, management. It's a very complex one, but it's easy to equate leaders to good motivators. They can give good speeches. They can give people direction, a sense of mission. Um, in the world of business, that's very quickly challenged by, is it producing actual results? You can
Right.
be an incredibly charismatic leader and still ineffective.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you just can't get around the fact that in business, we have to deliver. And what is it that we deliver? It's, I'm doing that on purpose. It's a very, very broad question, but we
yes.
deliver results, and results can be measured. And the best way to get people to produce the behaviors that will produce results is with good data. So, good leaders are
Yeah.
people, sorry, just to finish this quick thought, good leaders are people that can transform what otherwise would be cold numbers into a company's mission and strategy.
That's such an important point. Um, I think it goes back to what we're saying is uh, it's not just data that makes this happen. It's the culture, and the
Right.
culture often is largely influenced by the leadership. We could go through like a little mock scenario here. Let's just take something that's easy to understand, like a sales rep. You could have a sales rep that has a quota, and maybe the sales rep is not meeting their quota. Let's just say that's the scenario. How is that going to be handled? It could be, hey, sales rep, you better work harder because you're not meeting your quota. You need to do more of whatever you're doing so that you can meet your quota. Or it could be a deeper conversation. What exactly is that sales rep doing? Are there other sales reps that are being successful, or is this a broader issue? How is that sales rep deciding when to engage with prospects? How is that sales rep selecting the prospects? How is level one sales feeding? What level of opportunities are being fed to that sales rep? So what I'm trying to get at here is, how is that sales rep deciding how to spend their time, and what are they doing with that time? And it's not just data we're talking about here. There are other things, right? You obviously could have a sales rep that's just not working, right? That's a whole different issue. But assuming this is a sales rep that's actually working hard and not meeting the quota, if the leadership goes in and says, okay, well, let's look at this situation and essentially use it as a case study. Here's what's going on. How do we take this situation and help this sales rep be more successful? It uh, it may be that sales rep just simply doesn't have the opportunity to be successful because that sales rep doesn't have the information needed to be successful. You know, um, we can continue going down that road, but do you see what I'm getting at? If we take the conversation in that direction, it's not just work harder. It's, hey, let's figure out what's actually going on here and try to help that sales rep get to where they need to be. And one component of that is going to be making sure that they have the right information to be effective every single day. And that's just one example. All right, so we're coming back. We had a little technical difficulty there, but I was just finishing my point, Alex, that agreeing basically with what you were saying is, yes, it is the leadership that often is, I think, establishing that data culture, just setting the precedence that it is going to be, you're going to be questioned not on the outcomes of your decisions, but more on how you actually made that decision, what information went into the decision-making process, and how can we improve that, what actions were taken, as opposed to the actual outcome.
Yeah, true that. But I'm going back to the example of the underperforming rep, which I think is a rich one. Um, it made me think that the material of management is data. It may sound a little ambitious, but if you're leading groups of people and these groups may grow, and the collection of their behaviors or their actions gets complicated, and success in competition is your ability to bring that group together to a certain place where um, conditions are those that we wanted them to be. We're a bigger company, we're a more profitable company, we have more market share, our clients are more satisfied. For each one of those metrics, uh, getting the entire group to perform in a way that gets you there is the science
Magic.
of getting data to say that again.
That's magic, is what that is.
Right. Yes.
Make that happen.
So it's the art or science of getting people to respond to those inputs. And we're there again. It's how do you organize the information so that those people can say, "Oh yeah, I'm going in the right direction." Because I think a safe assumption is we're all acting out of our best intentions. We come here,
Yes.
we join a team, and we're going to do our best. It is leadership's responsibility to give each one of those players the information they need to despite the fact that we know they're acting out of, they're doing their best,
Yep.
are they pushing or pulling in the right direction? So, anyone that says, "Well, I'm going to steer this ship," first thing you need is to collect your signals. It's to set up your plan, and all of that is revolves and is centered on. Well, we're back to metrics. Uh, how do we get to growth? What does it take? And I see the data team as very central to that effort.
You could look at our organization as another example, Alex. We're a services organization, so naturally utilization is something that's very important to us. So as an organization, we all have a common understanding about how we manage our utilization. We are a little bit different than a traditional consulting company where you have people that are on the bench and you're on projects and off projects, right? We don't operate that way. So, and every company is that way, right? Every company is a little bit different. Even if they're doing the exact same thing, they're often operating a little bit differently. So what we do, just to make sure that we're all clear on what we're trying to achieve, is everybody has their own utilization and the components that make it up available to them every single day. And when we have meetings, we talk about, okay, how do we do with our utilization? Great. This team's doing great. This team might be falling behind. Why is that happening? What can we do to change it? To support what you were saying, if you don't even have that target out there, like if you can't tell people, here's what we want you to achieve and here's how we're measuring it, how are you ever going to know if you're being successful or unsuccessful at meeting that goal? That's we're really getting down to the foundation here, and that is the foundation.
What have we seen working and not working is, I think, a relevant question. One term that I frequently think about is the good thing with metrics is it sort of speaks to that very common, the very strong side of human nature. We're talking about competitiveness. We like to compare ourselves to our peers. To the people around us, and that sends me to the whole concept of gamification. The world of sports is very rich, and there's always the score, there's always the champion. I
Yeah.
think one approach that seems to have some effect is gamifying metrics somehow. We know people sometimes get even financial incentives to perform at a certain level. Those are very common. What has been your experience observing, our clients and the people you work with, uh, uh, implementing these metrics? What are the techniques and approaches that you've seen working and not so much?
I don't think I've ever really had any clients really take gamification, at least my understanding of it, to the full extent where you're actually trying to generate competition by, letting people know how each other's doing and,
Hmm.
and ranking them in some sort of way, maybe providing incentives. But I can say that, like in our some of our healthcare practices, it's pretty common to provide metrics to individuals, like individual providers, right? So you got providers out there that are doing their job. They are serving patients every day. They are not sitting here thinking about, um, metrics, right? It, it's kind of an interesting world that we live in, right? Because we're talking about doctors, we're talking about marketers, we're talking about, clerks, we're talking about leaders. So I think sometimes it can get confusing of how you actually use this method, or I guess how you implement a data culture to drive and improve your business, drive towards success. Anyway, for providers, what I've seen work well is giving them their own dashboard. Here's your provider dashboard, and it's just basic stuff like here's how many patients you've seen, here's how many encounters you've had over the period, here's how you're trending, here's how your collections are going. When you get into healthcare, you're dealing with RCM, and there's some specific metrics there that are important to providers because often they're paid by performance, not guaranteed benefits, but through performance. So there's metrics related to their collection ratios and specific things to providers. What types of CPTs or procedures are they charging for, and so forth. Anyway, so they all have their own view of the world. And like I was saying, we haven't actually, that I can think of off the top of my head here, got to the point where we're actually comparing one provider to the other. And I don't know how effective that would be. I'm just guessing at this point. But, it's not like provider A is on par with provider B in this scenario. Some providers are very new, some are very tenured, some are working in very high demand markets, and some are not. So there's a lot of factors there that make gamification, I think, a little bit challenging, at least in that situation. Not saying you couldn't do it, but you'd have to account for the, I guess, differences in opportunity.
It's a very good point. It raises even ethical questions. If you're if your work is the provision of care to people, it could be tricky to simply reduce that to numbers.
Yeah.
There are other factors that need to be taken into account. It's probably easier if you just have a team of salespeople and you want to reward and incentivize them very strongly to perform in a certain way. Um, so yes. Again, we always go back to leaders to give them the responsibility to make sure that the direction is provided in a balanced way. So it's not easy being a manager these days, because not only you have to interpret the world outside of you and I guess, define a direction for your business. You need to be very careful, very deliberate in the way you break that down for your organization in a way that is overall healthy. And there are all sorts of concerns there. In the case of, for example, and I think that also brings sort of a counterpoint to gamification, benchmarks. If you are in healthcare, it may help. It certainly does that you would understand what kinds of average outcomes you have for a particular situation or condition, what kinds of average productivity for a similar organization, providers around, say, the country achieve. And those sort of parameters helps managers, the industry in general, and even patients. So I think we all benefit of good, abundant data all around us. It can be a little more aggressive and driven. Take the example of sales. It can be a little more balanced and cautious. Take the example of healthcare. Whatever the case may be, you can't get around the fact that data is healthy. Information is always positive. The more of that we have around for everybody available at a low cost, it's like clean air these days. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, what's the alternative?
Right.
That's I would say. What is the alternative? How do you do it without this information?
It's darkness, right?
It'd be pretty rough. Yeah,
Right. Yes.
um, obviously it can be done, right? But I think if we go back to where we started and we think about what's going to make organizations more or less successful, and each organization determines what success means, right? If we're talking about healthcare, success might mean the quality of the care we're giving, or if we're talking about something else, a nonprofit or whatever, it's different level, different success definition. But either way, um, if we're going to define what success is, and we look at what it's going to take to get there, and again, if we believe it's going to be the cumulative decision-making ability of everyone in that organization that's going to determine whether we're successful or not, if you try to do it without the benefit of understanding the environment you're operating in versus understanding the environment you're operating in, which is a synonym for having information, data, I don't think there's any question that data is a clear advantage when applied correctly, accurately, in a valid way. Absolutely can be a game changer for an organization.
So I think we can close this one with a very strong assertion. For the managers of the world, if you want to be successful, make sure your organization has access to information as much as it needs, wherever it is, outside, inside, uh, assuming that that is available and everybody has access to that. It's now up to the team to make sure they intelligently process that and take the organization wherever it needs to be. But that's an absolute precondition for success these days. You can get lucky, but as a rule, if you just want to look at it rationally, the critical ingredient for success in competition these days turns out to be data, right?
I believe that is correct. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for watching one more time. We'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.
Thanks again for listening to More Than Reports. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Tune in to our next episode as we begin a new series on data architecture. See you then.